Today is all about using the in-game analytics to win more games in FM24. Now, if you've assembled a pretty good squad, you're probably going to go through most seasons without too much trouble. But like in life, there's always someone better than you, and when you come up against a big team, you're going to want to look for all their weaknesses and flaws so you can exploit them and get the most out of your system. Now, in this episode, I'm going to show you how I manually analyze the opposition in games when I think that there's a possibility we can get a result, but it's unlikely if we just go in as we are stock standard. I'll walk you through my analysis step by step, and then as proof of concept, we will play that big game that we have on our horizon to see if it actually works. Now, with the title and thumbnail of this video, if it doesn't work, I'm going to look like pretty much an idiot. But let's see what comes of this straight after the intro. So in the last episode, we went through a transfer special where we brought in a whole bunch of new signings, and then we took on Crew in a game that we got pretty lucky in. Since then, we've played 10 more games, and we've been pretty good with all the new additions in the team. We've conceded just 1 in the last 6 and scored 20 in that time, and it's been pretty much bliss. But now comes the big challenge, Gillingham. If you recall from an earlier episode, these guys were sitting at 1-93 odds to win the league on the season preview. Now, of course, that's changed significantly and they're just 2-9 odds now, with us sitting at 17-2, but the challenge is still definitely there. They're 4 points behind us in the league, but as of yet, they have not lost a game. 9 wins and 5 draws sees them sitting on 32 points, and they've been going great guns. So for us today, we need to find a way to make sure that we get this tie won. So under normal circumstances, if you're chilling on a club's overview screen, you'll get an option to go in here and get team reports for the senior squad. You can obviously go to analyst report or scout report and find out more about them. But as you can see right here, your board will not allow you to scout this team as they feel it would be too expensive for the club. And that, of course, poses a little bit of a problem. If I pop back to our scouting tab here, you'll see that we still do have something in our scouting budget, and that's made no difference in this case because the board just aren't having it. Nonetheless, if you can get this done, then by all means, this will be of definite help in your cause to beat the opposition. Today, though, I'm going to use their previous fixtures to find out exactly what they've been doing well and what they haven't been doing well for us to get a one-up on them. Of course, behind the scenes, I've gone through a lot of these games and it'll probably take you quite a bit of time. But to point out the concept, we're going to use just a few moments from individual matches to highlight possible ways that you can do this too. We'll start off by getting an overall picture of their results. As you can see, they've lost just 1 game, and that came in the EFL Cup first round against Exeter City, a team that actually is in this league and a team that they've subsequently beat 3-1. Now, for the most part here, they've been pretty good. They haven't conceded many, but they haven't exactly scored tons either. There has been a transfer window in between all of these results, so what I'm going to do now is only look at the most recent fixture. If you're doing this at a point in your save when the opposition are unlikely to have made recent changes, you could possibly use a lot more fixtures because what you're trying to do is get an idea of what's going on and then make predictions based on that to make changes to your tactics for the game coming up against them. In my case, as I said, because of the transfer window, there's been a little bit of a change to their system, so we're only going to look at the most recent fixtures. And we'll start off with the last one against MK Dons. So I must say, what I'm about to show you is based on how I appreciate football tactically. You perhaps don't think the same things, but the concept of what we're doing here is what you can hopefully use to apply to your context. As a quick example to point out the differences, think of Thiago Motta. If you follow my cursor, you'll see this little formation, which in the traditional sense is a 4-5-1 or a 4-1-4-1. To Thiago Motta, though, this is actually a 2-7-2. So what I'm trying to say is that each person sees football completely differently. But the goal here is to give you a method to find tactical information using the data. And then you can use that to apply to what you think are the most important tactical areas, either offensively or defensively. So to kick it off, we'll use 2 very broad categories to simplify the approach. Number 1, what can we do to hinder or limit the ability of the opponent to score goals? And number 2, what can we do to improve our chances of scoring goals ourselves or give us something of an attacking edge? We'll start from our defensive point of view. What I want to see here is how does the opponent set up an attack? Do they go narrow or wide? Do they go short or long? Are there key areas on the pitch that they focus their attacks through? And do they rely on specific players to get most of their attacking output? Once you've clicked on the analytical data, you should be faced with a screen something similar to this, and on the face of it, you already have a lot of information. What we can see here is a focus of attacks. Gillingham are in pink. As you can see, they attack quite a bit on the wing with a lot less through the center. Now, considering that they attack out wide quite a bit, this does not make a lot of sense. Most of their positional play, or average positions in this case, is in the middle of the park. They sit quite narrow here, and that is kind of counterintuitive. A team that plays quite narrow but attacks quite wide. So to find out more, we're going to pop into the teams. I'm going to keep those questions from earlier in mind throughout this, and we'll start off by looking at whether they go narrow or wide. If we hit the average positions button here, we can start off by saying starting 11 only, just to narrow it down so it makes it a bit easier to appreciate. And we'll kick it off with average position without the ball. It's currently showing us a map for both, which we'll go and change up to just Gillingham, and there we go. They of course are attacking from right to left. If I go then and add average positions with the ball, we'll start to see something of a difference. I've already taken note through my multiple looks at their various teams of who is who here in terms of the numbers. And from what I can see off the bat here, number 12, number 18, their fullbacks tend to push up quite high and quite wide when they attack. Now, judging by the very narrow positions of everyone else, it's very clear that they get their width from their fullbacks. So immediately, I'm starting to think that this is a team that likes playing out wide. But we can confirm this thought. We'll go ahead and clear events and then pop over to passes. Now initially I'm going to leave everything as is and then just hit the passes completed button to get a full map of what they've been doing. This map is helter-skelter and all over the place and quite hard to appreciate if you leave it as is. But to simplify, we can go ahead and narrow this down by different positions on the pitch. To start, yet again we'll clear events and then change the direction to only forward passes by removing the rest and leaving it as is. We'll then go ahead and hit passes completed yet again, and now you can see pretty much all the forward passes that Gillingham made in the game. Off the bat from this, what you can see very clearly, I think, is that there aren't many passes in the final third of the field here that are made from central areas. It seems there's a gross tendency for them to go out wide fairly early around the halfway line and use that width to develop their attacks. That's confirming our theory about them being a team that likes to play out wide. I will go ahead and just look at one more thing here by clearing events again. We've still got this on forward passes only for the whole pitch. I'm going to go down here to combinations. Connor Masterson to Cody Drumme was the most common forward pass made in the game. So we'll go ahead and try and show that. Now, Connor Masterson is the right-sided centre-back and Cody Drumme is the right full-back. As you can see here, this is exactly how these attacks seem to be starting. In most cases here, the ball comes in from Masterson, number 4, over to number 12, Drumme. Now to see exactly how this works, you can go even further. Go down to Drumme here and say show linked events and follow them up to see pretty much what happened after that pass was made. Cody Drumme took the ball there and then tried to drive into the center of the area. A few more passes were made and this went all over the shore. But the general idea is that they play the ball out wide and then try and work it into the center through short cutbacks or similar. Now we have an idea, grossly, of what they're trying to do in terms of their general attacking approach. But let's go a little bit further. Do they play their passes short or long? Clear that off the screen. What we can see here is an empty map. I'm going to go ahead and change the length of the pass up to long only. And then we're going to go ahead and say completed. There were 9 long passes completed by Gillingham in the entire match. Usually from the keeper into the midfield, but albeit not that many. He's made like 4 long balls here. The rest of them I assume are short. And we can find that out by clicking on short instead, removing the long, and there we go. A lot of short passes, usually around the center of the park, and then again going out wide on both flanks. So cool. They like to play in wide areas. They like to play shorter passes. If we switch up to medium, we'll see that there's a lot of medium length passes as well. So not completely short, not just 5-yard stuff, a little bit longer at times. But ultimately, it's not hoof ball over the top trying to exploit the space in behind. And it seems that they're pretty content playing in front of the opposition. Now the key is, when do they actually create anything substantial from the way they played? If we go ahead, clear events yet again, and you're going to need to continue doing this as you go along. The chalkboard isn't the most efficient method to do anything in Football Manager, perhaps why it's been removed for FM25, but let's keep going. We'll head down to scoring chances, and as you can see here, there's only been 2 clear-cut chances in this match for them. We'll click on them and we can see that they both are here. And I'm going to point out what we've already started to think We're hovering over George Lewis here, saying show linked events, and this is what you see. A couple medium range passes. This was perhaps a little bit longer, but out wide, Masterson, the centre back, pulling out quite wide onto the right, exposing that flank, and then finding the attacking right midfielder who made a short pass into the centre of the box. Nothing directly to the centre of the park. Let's look at a few other matches and see if they've done a similar thing. So this is against Exeter City in a game that they won 3-1. There were 9 half chances created here. Of course, in this case, Gillingham are attacking from left to right. Let's just click on a random one to see exactly what happened. Click on a number 9 here, Michael Mellon, show linked events. And what you have yet again is the right back laying the ball off to the centre back, Connor Masterson, then finding it back here. I'm assuming a big ball over the top, in behind the space of the fullback, and then he's whooped that in for Michael Mellon, and in this case, his shot hit the woodwork. If we look at another random chance here, let's just go to George Lewis, a different player, show linked events, and you see pretty much the same thing. Ball drilled in from a wide area, and then getting off a shot or something similar. Yeah, shot saved in this case. In this game, a 3-2 win against the Brentford reserves in the EFL Trophy. Jack Aitchison here, number 15, with a half chance in the middle of the box. That one's been worked around a lot, eventually got out wide, and then Tom Pearce, the left back, whooping it in for a shot off target in the center of the box. So they tend to overwhelmingly push the ball out wide and try and then get it into the box. There's a few other ways they do this. Perhaps this is a good reflection of that. Michael Mellon here, a few passes deep into their own half, playing in front of a defensive line. Then the fullback gets the ball, drives all the way down the wing, cuts back on the edge of the area, a short pass in from there, and then eventually a shot off target yet again. Of course, not every chance is engineered in the same fashion. There are a few others that are a little bit different. Like if we click on this one from Jack Aitchison, this one does come from out wide, but eventually makes its way into the center a little bit earlier before being lobbed over the top for the number 15 Aitchison yet again. The majority of their chances, though, as you would have seen from all of this, is that they go out wide and knock it into the box. So what you are trying to get from this is find out how they create most of their chances, try and stop that. So far, what we've answered is 3 parts of how to defend against them. We know that they like to attack the wide areas and tend to go short or medium with their passing. Not much along stuff anywhere so far. They exploit these areas adjacent to the 18-yard box on both sides of the pitch. And that leaves us with just one more part. Who are the key players in executing this attacking style? So to find out who makes the most passes and crosses to execute this attacking style, we're back in the MK Dons game because it was the last game. And we're going to filter this by passes firstly, and then sort by passes completed to see who gets most of the work done. What you can see off the bat here is it's the 2 centre backs with the highest amount of passes, Masterson and Katsukunya. Let's have a look at exactly how these passing maps look. But first, let's limit them to just the forward passes so we know what passes have been made in an attacking sense. We'll click on Masterson then, passes completed, and as you can see, the same thing, going out wide quite a bit. Katsukunya is pretty much the same on the other flank. Now the next 2 highest passes are actually fullbacks, Max Clark and Cody Drummond. I'm actually going to focus Drummond because he's been quite prominent in most of my looks at their data. You can see here that he's quite heavily involved further up the pitch with some long balls, unlike the rest of his teammates, but bursting down with passes quite often down the wing. So I'm going to bet that by limiting the distribution of the centre backs and stifling those fullbacks, we're going to go a long way to preventing a lot of the attacking output for this team. If we can find a way to force them into the center of the pitch, they're going to be forced to create chances unlike they have been doing in their other matches. Now yes, this is not real life where this might actually work, but remember that in the game, there's a degree of tactical familiarity that a team develops by playing a certain type of system. In your in-possession instructions, teams are coded to either play along the flanks or one flank, or play through the center, or just gung-ho through everywhere on the pitch. And we can see that they play along the flanks. So by forcing them into the center, they're going to be doing something that they just aren't used to doing. In doing that, we will hopefully get more of an opportunity to win the ball back and maybe even force them to go longer with their passing, opposed to their shorter passing style that we've seen from the analytics so far. It might also create a situation where the usual positions of the players change, and that might create a few more gaps in the middle of the park for us to exploit. I hope from this you have an understanding of how I use the analytics to find out what the opposition is doing and then try to create something of a counter plan. We'll delve more into it when we get to the tactics just before the match. As one last thing, I just want to point out a little bit more functionality that you could possibly use in this setting. If you head over to Teams yet again and then go to Movement, we could look at their movement map to see what they do in possession and out of possession. Now in FM25, we'll be getting out of possession instructions. So hopefully this looks somewhat similar in the next version of the game, and we can use it, as you will be able to see now, by hitting just Gillingham and then clicking on movement map. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play so we can have a look at what they do in terms of their positions on the pitch as the game goes along. They generally tend to defend in a bank of 4, a bank of 5, and 1 up front, or 4-1-4-1. We'll see here that there's 4 sitting at the back, 4 in the midfield, and 1 roaming kind of free in the center without the ball. Now, you can't see on this graphic when they have the ball, but you'll get a pretty clear picture very soon. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up to 5 times, and then I'll pause as you see a change in shape, which is right about now. What you see here is they actually have the ball right now, and you will know this when you see the big bursting run from the right back very soon. What they've done is they've moved from a 4-1-4-1 to leaving just 2 behind and pushing 8 other players all the way forward into attack. It turns into something of a 2-5-3. The 2 centre-backs staying put, 5 forming in the midfield with both the full-backs getting very heavily involved. One of the wide players tucking in and then bursting runs to overload both one flank and the centre of the box, which you'll see very clearly very soon. I've paused it right then. As you can see, the 2 centre-backs still sitting deeper than the rest. The full-backs have gotten involved. In fact, one of them is chilling all the way on the edge of the box. One of the wide men has gotten into the center of the box, and there's 2 more that are chilling inside the box as well, with one of the midfielders sitting on the edge. So this is the perfect way for us to transition into talking about how we're going to defend against them, into how we're going to attack against them. We need to find out if we can exploit the transition. That is when they lose the ball and we win it back. And if we do win it back, how can we exploit their setup to get the most joy on the counter-attack? We then need to look at areas of the pitch that they afford us most space so that we can use those areas to exploit on the attack, and then look at how they defend and where they defend or engage and press so that we have more time and room when keeping the ball. This shows you a very attacking system, but one that has a massive gaping hole behind all of these players if they lose the ball in the transition. Now, the transition is one of the key areas that we're going to be focusing on when we think about how we're going to attack them. We need to find a way to win the ball back and bang it over the top as early as we can, ideally into the wide areas. A target man sitting up top that doesn't exactly run the channels isn't going to be very valuable to us. But maybe a wide target forward or one that does run the channels could be very valuable in this case because there's absolutely no cover in here. We've got some very pacey forwards. We don't have a typical target man except for Alexander Turbat, who is quite a young player if you've watched the episodes leading up to this. So when we set up the tactic, we're going to have to tinker a bit here to see if we can get one person holding the line somewhere up top in the halfway line, but out quite wide. We will also look at playing a player in midfield that could potentially take up this space. And I'm thinking about Laith Gulzar, a player that will primarily play in defensive midfield, but as a deep-lying playmaker. If he can be an accessory in defense, with the wingers following their fullbacks and the rest tucking in to form a neat bank of 4 or 5, Laith Gulzar will then pick up a lot of space in this kind of situation that he can use to find that man that is holding up the line. Now, in your case, this will be different depending on the players you have, but I hope that this gives you an idea of how to potentially exploit the transition. Now, I'd advise that you look at this kind of thing for multiple matches to get a more clear idea of what they do more often than not. It's not going to be perfect, but you will be able to make some sort of reasonable prediction as to what areas of the pitch you can exploit in the transition, as I said. Now, in saying all of this, I've alluded to what I think is one of the most important tactical concepts, and that is the idea of exploiting space. For me, football is very much all about space. Having more space allows you more time and room to create chances with a lot less pressure than in the engaged areas of the pitch. So what we're now going to look at is how to find those areas off the field where we can exploit the space. We've already identified one by having a look at their average positions with and without the ball. I'm going to go ahead and clear events up and we'll just look at that exactly yet again. We'll pop down here to average positions. It's still filtered by Gillingham. We'll go without the ball. That's what they look like. I filter that down to starting 11 only. That's what they look like now. And then we'll hit average positions with the ball. And what you can see is exactly the same thing. Further up the pitch, more out wide, fullbacks very wide, and everyone else pretty much tucked in. And from this, we know that the wide areas for us are going to be equally as profitable as they have seemed to be for them. But we do need to sit fairly narrow to counter all of these players that they naturally have in the center. As much as we can limit the fullbacks' attacking potential by defending well, we can put them on the back foot by using our wide players to get in behind them more often than not. So we're going to put 2 in the central midfield from what I think in terms of the tactics to hold this up quite well. Keep our wide players out wide. Expect them to track back as much as they can. And when we get the ball back, we will try to feed it into Light Gulzar, who'll knock it back over the top in a fairly direct manner. Now we have a gross understanding already of what we want to do in terms of the attack, but let's try and get an idea of where they engage. I've spoken a lot about engagement and pressing in the past, especially with the Data Hub episode. We'll go ahead and clear events here and then have a look quickly at their tackles won and their tackles lost. I get the idea that they defend with something of a mid-block, not pressing too high and definitely not winning the ball too high up the pitch. You do also see a case or two, which I don't know if you would have picked up, but number 4 here, Masterson making a tackle way out wide. And in this case, Sean Maguire making a tackle way out wide. Number 18, Tom Pearce, and number 12, Cody Drummond, are actually the fullbacks in this case. So they've obviously left their centre-backs a little bit short. That is something that we've been looking at potentially exploiting. So good, we have a general picture of what we're trying to do, and I think that answers most questions. But there's one more thing you can do. Let's have a look at the players individually to see if there's anything within the attributes that we could possibly exploit. I'll just go down here and click OK, and then we'll go back to their squad and have a little click on the players that we think are important. Now they play with a 4-2-3-1, and what you would have noticed from the way they attacked is they don't do this in the traditional sense. Usually, a team with a central attacking midfielder will use that cam to make short killer passes in between the centre-backs or just behind them on either side to get the wide players involved, rather than the passing coming out from way wider, like the fullbacks, and eventually finding its way into the central areas. So this guy, Greg Lewis, who's actually playing in the centre, is a little bit of an issue for us. And we know that he can play out wide, but he has been playing in the center, and we haven't fully scouted him. We've been having some issues with scouting, as you would have seen, but what we can tell off the bat is he's fairly quick, got a decent first touch and finishing, and decent technique. This passing, I assume, is a little bit higher, and the vision isn't entirely great, so not a traditional creative central attacking midfielder, I would think, and especially with the 4-9 decisions, he probably is more of a runner, a player that functions almost as a second striker at times, and one that is used to run off that striker that they have playing centrally. 185 centimeters, possibly not the quickest on the scene. We don't know exactly what type of striker he is, but I'm willing to bet he's something of a pressing or target forward rather than an advanced forward. So we're going to bank on this game plan now as we head into the tactics. We know how to attack against them, how to defend against them, and which players to focus on. And let's put that into play in terms of the tactics. What I hope that you grasp from all of this is that there is a way to find out exactly how the opposition is playing. And in a case where you have a very big match that you perhaps weren't necessarily going to win, you could try to give yourself a little bit of an advantage using these methods to make more informed tactical decisions for that match specifically. Now, I've said in the past, develop your tactical system to something you want to see. And ideally, you have a primary tactic like we do that is generally pretty dominant. But, as I said earlier at the very start of this, there are going to be those games where you need to be a little bit more Jose Mourinho and play the match situation. So, if you remember, I said we're setting up another tactic to try and be a bit more pragmatic. And that's where this one comes in. A 4-3-3 custom control possession, but we're going to have to tinker with this a bit to get it suited to using for this game. Now let's think about it yet again. They want to play out wide, and we need to defend those areas primarily. Traditionally, we tend to go with fullbacks that push further up the pitch and overlap a lot. So we're going to start off in this case by focusing on being defensively sound first rather than attacking, because ultimately we are best served by just not losing this game. We're going to change Joe Ashton to a fullback on defend, and likewise Robinson to a fullback on defend as well. The centre-back issue is pretty much tied up, as you would know if you've watched previous episodes, with Kirkup and Chaplin in there. Now that we've changed the formation from the previous one, George Earthy is going to have to drop out of this team. I could potentially play him in central midfield, but I like to favour the man in form. Teddy Rowe, currently chilling with a 7.76 in recent times. We're going to leave him in there. What I did say as well is that we're going to pop Light Gulzar in here as a defensive midfielder with a deep-lying playmaker role on him. This is currently set to defend, but we're going to have to change that a bit. When the deep-lying playmaker is set to defend, they tend to be a bit more reserved in their passing range, so we're going to go ahead and change him up to a deep-lying playmaker on support. We'll pop Matthew Fraser over to the ball-winning midfielder role and change his role to a defensive one so that he could make sure that we're a bit more short in midfield. Teddy Rowe is functioning as a general central midfielder on support to offer us a little bit in terms of numbers going forward and when retreating. Now, I wanted to play a target man or something of a wide target man, and I've actually thought about it here. Harry Cornick, if you just look at his profile, we'll see that he is tall enough, 180 centimeters, not the tallest, but definitely tall enough. He's got strength of 11 and pretty rounded attributes otherwise. Maybe we can use him as something of a wide target forward. I'm going to go here and just click on wide target forward on support rather than attack. And I ideally want him to function like a Romdeuter, but the problem with that role is the individual instructions force them to sit a bit more narrow. We want him to be sticking out wide, as we would have seen. We're then going to change up Oakley Cannoneer and make him something of a deep lying forward on support rather than attack. That is mainly to get him involved with helping us defensively by pressing those two centre backs. We're going to leave Anthony Pinto on inside forward and support. He can offer us a bit tracking back and getting in more central areas to hopefully get on the edge of some knockdowns from Cornick as he gets involved in that long ball play from Light Gulzar. Now, depending on how this goes, I could possibly move Cornick to the center, ask him to roam the channels as the target man, and pull Cannoneer out wide to do the running that I expect him to do as a deep lying forward. But with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and change some of the tactical instructions. We're going to change the mentality up to balanced, unlike it normally is with positive, and then set our in possession instructions. And in terms of our attacking width, we want to go as wide as hell. We're going to focus the play down both wings to start, and we'll see how that evolves as the game goes along. And in this case, we don't necessarily want to be playing out of defense, even though we want to retain a fair bit of possession. I'm going to change the passing directness to standard and the tempo to a little bit higher so that hopefully Light Gulzar gets the ball knocked up top a little bit faster. We don't want to be hoofing the ball, so we're still going to try and work it into the box, because although there might be some big booming passes from the deep lying playmaker, we still want us to work the ball. It's not just gung-ho, knock the ball up top, route one stuff. The one thing that we mustn't forget is pass the ball into space, because that's going to be pretty important as well. We'll move over to in transition. So based on how they play, I don't think the counter press is the best thing to do here. We're going to regroup more often than not and try and let them play in front of us. Our distribution in general terms will be to the playmaker, and once we've got the ball back, we'll try and counter. When the goalkeeper has the ball, I want him to distribute it quite quickly to Light Gulzar, and we'll go ahead and say take short kicks, just to make sure that if that pass is a little bit further forward, he doesn't just change his mind and knock the ball all the way top. Out of possession then, we remember that they play quite a high line, with those fullbacks pushed quite out wide. Now, we've also seen that a lot of their chances are created from these sort of areas adjacent to the 18-yard box, so I'm not going to push the defensive line up too much. In fact, I'm going to drop it back just a little bit to suck them in a little bit deeper and hopefully expose that back line even more. We'll drop this mid block to a low block to sit on the halfway line where most of their play was being done. And although this seems very heavily defensive, I'm pretty sure in the context based on how they play, we're going to be pretty successful doing this. Now, the pressing trap is already set to trap inside, and that is definitely something that we want to be doing in this case. We're going to stop crosses by all means, and we'll remove the defensive line instruction of step up more. It's fairly fine if they do either or. Now, whilst I want us to press, I don't want us to lose our shape too often, so we're going to drop this to standard. And that should be that. Now, to close it off, before we go ahead and play this game, we're going to head over to the play instructions and have a quick look at the most important parts of our 11 here. Start off with Light Gulzar and edit his instructions as a deep lying playmaker. I want him to be more direct with his passing. I don't expect him to be dribbling too much, so we'll say dribble less, so that when he gets the ball, he just goes big, finds the man out wide, and hopefully that leads to more attacks on the counter. Being the extra man in midfield that we want to exploit the space, we're not going to ask him to press any more or mark any tighter, and we'll leave it as is. Now, the others that are key figures in this will be the left wing, Harry Cornick playing in that wide target forward role. We want him to move into the channels, and I'm actually going to go ahead and ask him to take more risks with his passing, hoping that if he does find the ball out wide and someone makes a run through the center, he goes ahead and just whacks that through, either as a flat through ball or as a big booming cross. The problem is, because out of possession, keeping him out wide and holding that line, he's not going to be able to track back the right back. We're going to have to rely very heavily on our left back and our left-sided central midfielder. But as I said, we could possibly change this and move him central in the game if it isn't working. So for now, we're going to leave it as is. Oakley Cannoneer then will hopefully be more functional in the press than Cornick is. We will ask him to press more often, mark tighter, and tackle harder so that he gets very heavily defensively involved. Apart from that, I'm fairly happy with what he's doing, and so we'll move on to the left-sided central midfielder. Now, because of the Cornick issue, I'm going to go ahead and ask Matthew Fraser to follow the right back. We'll say mark specific position and say defender right, and leave that at that. And that should be us done. Hey presto, everything set for potentially a very good game against Gillingham. Now let's head in there after I make sure that everyone is in the right positions, and I think they are. Our bench looks fairly clean with Hollingshead on the bench, George Earthy to offer us a potential change in system, and some cover for the right back in Lyle Standen, potential target forward in Turbat, and because he's a little bit unfit at the moment, we're actually going to pull Alfie Pinyon off there and bring in Nico Jones as a potential centre back to play if need be. Pretty much set otherwise. Let's see how all of this effort works out in the actual game. So we're going to see how this plays out early on. If that whole thing with Cornick and Cannoneer doesn't work out, we'll go ahead and make that change pretty early. I have a very low threshold for changing that because I'm a little bit skeptical about whether to use him out wide or a central target forward. Ideally, what we want to do here, as I said earlier, is to force them into doing something different. They're playing that 4-2-3-1. If they change that shape or if they don't score any goals for most of this game, we're pretty much going good. They have a free kick which they've knocked over the top, but it's found Dennis Wall. And can we turn this into something of an attack? Maybe go to one of the defenders, but Gulzar's pulled in and he still has gone over the top, but we have found a way to exploit that space out wide. Cornick has still come infield and hits the bar from row. So it worked out pretty neatly. They're exploiting that space in behind, and now Robinson finds one to attack them on the counter yet again. Pinto, Robinson to Gulzar, ball goes to the top, in that space again. Can Pinto finish? He puts it wide. That is about as perfect as we could expect. That is literally what we were trying to do. And I'm quite surprised because tactical familiarity is a thing here. They haven't had much time to learn the roles. No one should be particularly familiar with the approach. So let's see. Looks promising. Maybe we can get that result in this game. So 30 minutes or so in, we have about 54% possession. It's ebbing and flowing up and down. Now we have a corner. Pinto to whoop one in. He goes towards a far post. Chaplin slots. We get to go from a set piece at the far post as our set piece instructions have been set. That's a bonus, and I think we might have got rewarded for frustrating them as much as we have so far. They have another chance that's developing here. Centre backs, this very high system as we have seen in the analytics. We don't manage to win the ball back and we get a bit lucky there. We do need to be a little bit better in that situation because if we do turn it over, that is gold. Yet another attack before the half is over, and this time we do win it. It finds Rowe. Can he go out wide? A bad pass. Individual errors is something we can't account for. Thankfully that's missed and goes out wide, but if Teddy Rowe found that pass, we were in position A1 to make it count yet again. It's halftime then, and we'll see how this plays out as it goes forward. 46% possession now, so we need to be doing a little bit better on that end, but we've limited them to an XG of just 0.44. So good stuff. We lead. Let's see what comes of this. The second half underway, and they've changed their shape. They're now playing with 5 at the back and 3 up top. We're going to go ahead and make a few changes here. I think it's about time to switch back to our original formation because this is perfect. We've got them to do what we wanted them to do from changing up our tactics all that much. Let's see, even though we're leading, if we can make this work. I'm going to pause right here, get into the tactics, and then get some work done by switching back up to our stock standard formation. Alat Gulzar has done fairly decently for what we've asked. We're going to move Fraser into the ball-winning midfielder role and Teddy Rowe back into the box-to-box role. And then we'll bring George Earthy on in attacking midfield. Oakley Cannoneer is up top now. Everything else is pretty stock set standard. We don't exactly need to bring anyone else on immediately. Cornick is a bit burnt. We might bring Rico Patterson on in a bit, but let's go ahead and see how this plays out for the immediate future. And hopefully we get the result that we've been begging for. Now they have a chance, and they're still creating out wide as they usually do. Can we win this back and turn something into an attack like we usually do? This is supposed to involve a lot more pressing. Kumba's going to put that over. He actually hits the crossbar. So we'll keep at it going into the last 15 or so, and now they have a free kick We win that back. He's surely offside. Yes, Thierry Katsukunya is offside. Sorry, boys. Let's see what comes in the last 15. I'm going to go ahead then now and make a quick sub. Cornick is quite gassed. We'll take him off and bring on Rico Patterson for some legs. And play this out. Chance developing for Gillingham. They get that one. Was that a foul by Kirkup? We might be a little bit lucky there. They go in from a wide area yet again, and Dennis Wall holds on pretty well. It was offside. Now another free kick, and can we turn one of these into a counter? That's a big ball up top. Cannoneer was never winning that. He's an absolute shorty. There's no chance he was going to win that in the air. And we forced them into giving us the ball back by cramping up some wide positions. We generally tend to play pretty wide in this formation as well, so it will be fairly adept at preventing attacks from out wide. But we've allowed one through the center, and we have gotten really lucky. That was a mare. Keeper makes a save at the very end here, and then he claims again. Dennis Wall coming up trumps for us. As we get into the injury time here, I think that this worked out. Did I say it too soon? I was about to say it pretty perfectly, but might all go pear-shaped right now. No. No. Dennis Wall, my king. He wins that ball back and he makes sure that we don't concede late here. At least for now. What are you doing, Dennis? Why are you going big up top? Win that back. Oh, we're doing some monkey things here now. This is the part that I don't like. A corner. Are they going to bring the keep up? So, what I was saying was that the plan seems to have worked pretty perfectly. In the last few minutes, they've found quite a bit of chances from free kicks and the sort, but they've never been able to attack us directly from open play, apart from that one chance at the very end, very recently. Apart from that, it's gone great. So I would suggest that the plan that we executed based on what I've been trying to tell you works, does in fact work. That is that. Full time, we win. We've limited them to an XG of 0.9 as a much better team than us. They were tipped as 1-93 favorites to win this league. We get away a little bit lucky to score ourselves, but that's what life is. The primary goal here was to defend well, and we've stymied them so much that they've changed formation. So I'm going to say, try this. Use the analysis and try to make a plan to counter what the opposition does when you think that standard you're not going to get a win. Now I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, drop me a like, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to stay tuned for everything that is to come. But until the next one, please take care and laka. Check you. Bye.